Welcome back to Cougar Conversations here as it's the halftime show of Grayson County football on K105. We got a very special guest here for today. As I'm Sam Gormley, now joined by Grayson County High School alum Mason Parker. Mason, what's going on? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I don't know if you know Judge Executive Kevin Henderson, but he always has a question. And I know this is probably not just his question, but it's one that I've heard him ask multiple people, especially when I bring like our crew around. He points at him and he asks the question, who's your family? So he asks that just to see, okay, I know the kid, but I probably know your parents better. So Mason, I ask you now, who's your family? So people that are listening can figure out, oh, I know Mason.
Yeah, so my dad is Mr. Parker, the principal of the middle school. You probably know him. I feel like everyone in the county does. And then my mom is a retired elementary school teacher. She taught at Wilkie, so long line of teachers for parents.
No, that's great. My mom is a retired educator as well, so I know exactly what that's like. Today, you live and work in Los Angeles as a dialogue editor. Now, I guarantee someone today is listening and they're saying, you're a what? So to them, what do you say? What is a dialogue editor?
Okay, so this is the big question. So basically, I work in post-production sound for film and TV, which is, it has nothing to do with like the production of things. So like if you think of like things that are shot on sets and like shoots and stuff like that, and like being with actors, like I'm not doing any of that. I'm on the back end of everything. And basically what like specifically what a dialogue editor does in my job is we get all of the production sounds. So that was, you have lavs and booms and mics and stuff on set to record the actors and their performance, and we get all of that and we have to clean it up basically, because film sets are very noisy. I don't know if people realize how noisy they can be. Obviously, if you're shooting outside and it's windy or it's rainy, like we have to combat all of these noises. And yeah, I think that a lot of people think that you just stick a boom pole up in someone's face and it's clean and crisp and ready to go. But for on my end of things, we have to take out people's mouth clicks and pops and smooth out room tone, which is making sure different shots sound good together and they flow, because really all we're trying to do is bring a director's vision to life. And anything that's distracting to the audience or sounds unnatural is not good.
Coming from somebody who has a bad problem, and I've gotten better about being a pee popper, which for those listening that don't know what that is when you talk, when you drop your P's, you do a popping sound and you put overemphasis on that. So I thank you for doing work for people like me that have a lot of problems with that, because it's a problem. I know that. Why was this though the pathway for you? Why was this something you were interested in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long road to get to something like a dialogue editor. I think most people in the post-production sound world for film and television come from a music background. I was a band kid in middle school and high school, and percussion and piano was a big passion of mine. And I went out of state to Middle Tennessee State to get a degree in audio production. So I knew I wanted to do something, audio sound related. That was initially going to be, more music recording or live sound. But I didn't really feel a strong passion for these things. And, I took a couple film classes. I've always really liked films, more so than television. And, I basically took a film sound class where it was like, going over all the basics. And, I think everyone, when they think of like film sound, they think of music initially, which is like, I don't do anything with music. And then after music, they think of like, oh, sound effects. So you're like, adding in gunshots or footstep sounds or, door slams, which is a very, very big proponent of film sound. And this was and that was interesting to me, and I enjoy that, and I still do that sometimes. But I felt that dialogue editing was like very, no one talks about dialogue editing, and this isn't something that's really known, and a lot of people don't realize that it is done to a very fine, specific detail. And I just loved the way that dialogue editing is very meticulous. It's not, sound design for films, like adding sound effects can be very overwhelming. There's 150 door slam sound effects that you can use. That's kind of daunting because you don't know which one is right. All the dialogue that you get from production, it's right there. You have to clean it up. You have to listen very carefully, and it takes time. It's very meticulous. It's not, a lot of people find it very boring because it is so finite and very detail oriented. But I think that's my mind works in like, I don't know.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying. I liked to, in looking at you, I found an IMDb page, which is really cool because it's not like everybody can say, yeah, I have an IMDb page. And on there, I noticed you worked on an episode of Law and Order to show, obviously, many people know about. What was that like?
Yeah, it's that was an opportunity that I got from a internship that I had in Nashville, actually, working at a post-production place. It's a place called Digital Audio Post, and yeah, that was, that a lot of those credits that I have on IMDb are ADR related, which is automated dialogue replacement, which is basically when we get the dialogue from set and something is like way too noisy, or a line can just not be heard, and through noise removals and other plugins and software we can't fix it. It's not to the point where it can be fixed. Then we'll have the actors come back in and re-record those lines in a booth with a boom and a lav to mimic how it was on set the best we can. So yeah, for that Law and Order episode, we had one of the actors come in, and we re-record his lines. So I was there just like taking notes and stuff, nothing too crazy, but making sure that the client, the actor, had everything they needed, and that the session was running on time, and it was smooth and everything. So yeah,
I always like asking when we're talking. I know last year we had LV Shane on Cougar Conversations, and I asked him the question of, is there anybody that you've performed with, you've met, that you kind of had to pinch yourself and it'd be like, dang, like I'm really doing this? So I ask you that same question. Is there someone that you've met, and it could be somebody that we don't know, maybe it's somebody in the audio business that is just, the George Clooney of audio editing or something, but is there someone in that realm that you've met, or is there someone that you're hoping to meet that fits into that question?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that obviously there's a lot of people that I went to meet, a lot of actors, a lot of directors. I really like working with directors, and I like how their brains work, and how their vision is brought to life. There's obviously a lot of sound people that I've met that I really look up to, and a lot of people that I've even just networked out here that work at Warner Bros. And Universal that have been really, really nice to me. I think that like the most pinch yourself moment was probably at that same internship in Nashville. We had Nicole Kidman come in for some ADR, and that was a pretty surreal moment where it was just like, I'm meeting Nicole Kidman, and I'm talking to her, and she was very nice. Keith Urban came in with her, and that was a pretty surreal moment. I was a little nervous, I didn't want to mess up anything, but it was fun.
See, that's exactly why I like asking that question, because it's just like, it's just for them, it's a typical day, Nicole Kidman, but it's just really interesting seeing how they can have that impact on you in just a little bit by just saying hi. It's awesome. It says on your website that you recently worked to, or maybe are currently working on, a full-length feature film. I don't think people have any idea how much work goes into that. And this might not be the easiest question for you to even answer, but how long does that even take? So I don't think people can even wrap their brain around a full-length feature film. How long does it take to do the audio for it?
Yeah, I mean it's a long time. This was it's a pretty low budget indie, so it's not anything crazy. But yeah, and I was tasked with, I am the post-production audio guy, so I'm doing the dialogue editing. I'm also adding sound effects. I'm also mixing everything together. I'm making sure that, we don't need any ADR where, we have to re-record lines. And, then I'm in conversation back and forth with the director, and I'm doing playback sessions and making sure that they're pleased with everything that I'm doing. It can be a long process. It was probably off and on for about 6 to 7 months at the least, which is, hundreds and hundreds of hours. So it's a pretty big undertaking for sure. A lot more than a short film. And this was just like a 70 or 80-minute feature. So, if you think about, like 120-minute film or like 140-minute film, like those, at the really high levels, they can be in post-production for years for sure.
Yeah, I don't think people really realize how much work goes into you going to the movie theater and watching the latest Avatar movie or something, because the sound that goes into that is incredible. Let's take you back to Grayson County High School. I know you graduated in 2021. We always like to give our guests an opportunity to name drop maybe a teacher or two or a staff member that really had a big impact on you. Is there anybody that comes to mind for you? And it doesn't even need to be at Grayson County High School. This could be at the elementary, at middle, and you can't say your dad.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have to shout out my mom and dad because I both had them as teachers. I think that obviously, as band directors, Mr. and Miss Bell at the high school really, pushed me, and they're some of the finest educators I've ever been around, because they know how to teach, they know what to put in front of you, and I feel like they saw a lot of potential in me, and they made sure that I wasn't going to waste any of that. And yeah, they always pushed me. So
you mentioned band, and it leads right into my next question, because I was going to ask about that, because I was talking to somebody who I think actually it was Norman Chaffins. That's who it was who was talking about this. He is a sports guy through and through. And he says that over the last few years, he realizes how much respect he has gained for marching band because of the amount of work that you all put in. How did band help you today?
That's a big question. It's a good question. I think it helped in, basically every aspect of my life. A sense of community, a sense of, purpose, and, it gave me a drive to, want to succeed and want to do good things. But, at the end of the day, I think it gave me a lot of focus, and, obviously a lot of, relationships I've had there have carried over into other things. And I think that just learning to work together at something and learning how to, critique people in the right way, and to take criticisms, constructive criticisms, hopefully. And, working through all these things over a long process of time, you're all trying to meet one goal. I mean, it's like anything else in life, you got to work together. And I think that, that carries over into the jobs that I still do. It carries over into, the way that I talk to clients, just having, banter and being able to, you can't be too serious, but you can't be too fun. It's towing that line of being a guy that, everyone wants to be around. And I think that band taught me a lot about, how to have fun when it's time for fun, but how to be serious and be driven when it's time for that as well.
Yeah, it's a fine line. It's tough for a lot of people to figure that out. Now, I know, for people in Grayson County, a lot of students growing up, they just think of, I'm going to be in Grayson County the rest of my life. you are an example, and a lot of our guests throughout this segment, throughout the history that we've done this, are all examples of you can do great things of what you learned in Grayson County. To a student who's listening right now that might have a dream of, it might not even be working in Hollywood. It might be working for NASA. Like last week, we had Jordan Lindsay on. What would be your advice to someone like that maybe has big dreams that is in Grayson County right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, it's really easy for me to say like the cliche thing where it's like, chase your dreams. You can do anything. But I do really believe that, if you set your mind to something, and you have enough motivation, you have enough willpower, that, you can really do anything you want. That doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. I think moving across the country by yourself is probably not the easiest thing to do in the world. And there's rough days and stuff, but I don't have any regrets. And I think that, if you're in, high school right now, and just, get good grades and study up and try to be the best person that you can be, and don't settle for, being mediocre. That's not what life's about.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Last question for you. And it might be the hardest one to answer, because I know that sometimes I even struggle answering questions like this, and it's what's next? What is next for you? What do you hope the next 5 or 10 years look like for you?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. I'm still getting my footing here in Los Angeles, and, still meeting people and finding a good friend group and, a good community and stuff, which is a little bit harder than you would think, in a city this big. But I think that, I want to continue like in this craft and, just get better at my skills and practice every day. And, it's like anything else, just baby steps to the big goal, which I guess the big goal would be, working at a studio like Warner Bros. Or Universal or Disney. And, that's in this field, it can take 10, 15, 20 years. It's a long process, and you've got to be able to weather that storm. And definitely through things like COVID, and, we had the writers' strike a couple years ago, which is, we're still feeling some effects of that from that. But I think that, for me, it's just, just finding something that will always push me, and finding something that I have a passion for. And, whether it's, dialogue editing or maybe something else in audio, or, I can't tell you what my life's going to look like in 10 years. I wish I could, but I think that, the most important thing for me is to like feel at peace about something, and also feel that need to like, hey, I want to get up and get better at this, and, feel like I've done something.
I love it. Well, hey, I know I can speak for most of Grayson County now and saying, we're cheering for you. Good luck. We're proud, and really excited to see what the future can hold. And maybe in 5 or 10 years, we have you back on the segment, and you're working audio for the newest, I don't even know. I see you got Monsters, Inc. back there. Maybe you're working the next Pixar movie or something like that. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Thank you.
We're looking forward to it. This has been our halftime segment for Cougar Conversations. We'll come back as the halftime show continues after this.